What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.
Hello, AVAIYA family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner Ike Allen and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of AVAIYA University. AVAIYA is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you so much for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Dr. Ameet Aggarwal, is back with us today to talk about healing personal and family betrayals and traumas with expression, homeopathy, and family constellations therapy. Voted one of the top 43 therapists worldwide, Dr. Ameet helps you heal the root cause of mood problems and physical illness by focusing on healing personal trauma, negative beliefs, your ancestral trauma, and your biology. He combines naturopathic and functional medicine, Gestalt psychotherapy, EMDR, family constellations, and homeopathy to help you heal your body and mind together. Welcome back to AVAIYA, Dr. Ameet.
Thanks, Andy. It's exciting to talk about betrayal and deception because of all the underlying emotions behind it. Do you know what I mean? The guilt, the surprise, the anger, the shame, etc. And I really want to introduce our listeners to the concept of homeopathy healing these deep wounds. And then we'll touch a bit on, of course, family constellations when there's betrayal and deception in the family system from ancestors and what we can do about that.
Great. Yes, absolutely. So let's dive in, right? You mentioned all the different emotions that come out of having the experience of betrayal and deception. So given all of that, how does someone move on from these experiences?
First of all, it depends what kind of betrayal we're talking about, right? And who the person is. So if it's a betrayal by a family member, especially by a parent, that goes really deep because we're made up of our parents. And so when we antagonize against the betrayer, and it's a parent, we're antagonizing basically between us and our source energy, which is our parents. So that creates a lot of inner damage, low self-esteem, a crashing of energy, actually, right? People with chronic fatigue can often come from this lack of sense of support from the parent lineage. And we'll talk about it in family constellations. We need that support and that life energy from our grandparents, from our parents, right? Because they gave us life. And when we lose trust in that, we lose our footing, our groundedness. So our root chakra becomes unearthed. Yeah. So we go into anxiety, depression, fatigue, etc. So let's explore the different kinds of deception, I guess. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you know. With relationship betrayal, then depending also on the history you have, right? Those old wounds get opened up, right? So if your partner betrays you sexually or emotionally, one, it's a break of the heart, right? Your heart breaks. And sometimes there's a deep sexual wound as well. You don't feel good enough sexually. You have a lot of shame around that. And those old wounds of childhood around your sexuality also come up. And so how we heal it is layer by layer. We heal the trauma or the deception using psychotherapy, homeopathic remedies, which I'll cover just now, certain ones, which are great for betrayal and deception. And then once we heal those layers, it's important to look at the inner layers, the childhood wound layers that get opened up when betrayal and deception happens, right? Sometimes we let it happen because we don't have the self-esteem to have boundaries in the first place against dysfunctional people in our lives. We don't know how to say no, right? And that comes from guilt, from lack of power, from shame, yeah? And just trying to please everyone. So these are the multiple layers that we have to look at when we're dealing with deception and shame.
Yeah. And you mentioned a bit ago, right, the different kinds of feelings that can come up, the shock, the guilt, the shame, those kinds of things. Why do you think it's important for people to really acknowledge those feelings and not, ignore them or push them away?
Those are our tender feelings, right? Those are our vulnerability points. Yeah, to admit, gosh, I was surprised when you do that. And those of you listening can try these sentences out. I was surprised when that happened. I didn't expect that to happen. One is you express yourself in a vulnerable way. At the same time, you regain your power because you become autonomous rather than depending on the other person to correct themselves. You're owning your experience. right? I'm disappointed with you, right? I'm enraged. I feel raped. I feel just ungrounded, yeah, or surprise. Surprise is a good one to start with. It's easy to digest for our nervous system. And when you own the experience, then your nervous system settles down a bit. You're less entangled in the blame and the lock with the other person because you're getting in touch with your true feelings. When that happens, you get a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift meaning you recollect missing parts of you that dissociated during the betrayal or the trauma. I call it all of these traumas, right? We dissociate. And when you say I was surprised, you get an emotional experience and a visceral experience in your system. And that visceral or resetting then calms down your vagus nerve, your parasympathetic system, your adrenal system. They all come out of fight or flight or rage or even freeze. Yeah. And that's super important because often when your physiology is stuck in fight, flight, or freeze based on a deception, betrayal, and old childhood wounds, your adrenal system is always overworking. Yeah, your mind is making up stories of resentment, of blame, of not good enough, etc. You're in a narrative. And that narrative continues and sends you into a dark hole, right? And then you acting a bit dysfunctionally, you're not in your best interest, not according to light or source light or energy or your higher self, because this narrative is driving you, yeah, triggered by these wounds that are still festering. Yeah. And so if we can release them with these sentences and the homeopathy, which we're talking about soon, as well as calming down the adrenal system, yeah, then your perception changes, your neurotransmitters come more into balance because adrenal fatigue or adrenal exhaustion actually throws off your neurotransmitters. And we've talked about that in other talks where your cortisol levels go off and then your neurotransmitters start dropping and you go into anxiety and depression after a betrayal. So all of these things are super important. And then adding homeopathy, of course, works much better because it goes beyond therapy. Yeah, it really heals the energetic and emotional vibrations in a person throughout the system, which is different with therapy. Therapy addresses one concept at a time, but homeopathy can go deeper and can complete the cure for a person, I think, faster when we get the right remedy.
Gotcha. And can you talk a little deeper about the different remedies that you recommend for things like this shock experience and trauma, anxiety, and depression?
Absolutely. So I cover most of these in the online course, but I want to give you a few that it's important to read about and see if they fit you. But obviously, see a homeopath, right? See a homeopath or a good therapist who can help you with these. So I often use Ignatia, Ignatia, Ignatia Mara. That's excellent for shock and betrayal, especially when you have anxiety, the sense of tearfulness, lump in the throat. Sometimes it's difficult to cry or you cry easily when you're on your own, right? It's a sudden shock. There's more anxiety with Ignatia for people who need Ignatia. Some people who are more depressive, resentful, withdraw. That's often a picture of Natrum muriaticum. I like Natrum muriaticum as well. I use it for headaches sometimes, especially after an emotional disappointment when people get a headache or issues with your mother. Yeah, Natrum muriaticum is often used when there's betrayal or abandonment from a parent, yeah, or a deep love. There's less anxiety, more depression there. Then we have Aurum. Aurum is homeopathic gold. Aurum is excellent when you feel this sense of like guilt, shame, a lot of shame, sometimes suicidal thoughts. You know, sometimes when people are betrayed, rather than blame the person and get aggressive, they collapse. We call that in homeopathy, we call it the syphilitic or self-destructive constitution. And that self-destruction comes with suicidal thoughts, self-blame, collapse, turning inwards against yourself, right? And that inner conflict often needs deeper remedies like Aurum metallicum. Yeah, and there's many others. Staphylos aureus is a great one as well, when there's a lot of shame and suppressed anger, right? And you don't know how to express it. Maybe you feel timid or you have all this rage inside, but to be safe, you talk very timidly. Yeah, so I find Staphylococcus aureus excellent for releasing that deep down anger and giving people that confidence once again. Lycopodium, another great remedy for people who lack confidence. It's not often used for betrayal and shame, but sometimes a person who's been betrayed or deceived has an underlying constitution of that feeling not good enough and a lack of confidence. And so when you give that inner remedy, then they overcome the shame much faster. Yeah. And lycopodium is also excellent for liver detox, but that's a whole separate topic.